Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, August 23rd. We're almost heading into the last third of the year. I'm very excited. A lot of great things happening. In case you haven't joined us before, I'm a sales coach and trainer. I work with both individuals and organizations internationally to help them do one thing and one thing only: get measurable and sustainable sales increases. And I founded the Sales Pro Network to elevate the profession of sales, to give salespeople a place to hang out, network with each other, learn from each other, ask questions, get coaching. There's a lot of great people on here who can give awesome advice. And if you've joined us before, you know that every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, I either do a live training or a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales. And I'm not sure if today is an exception or not. Our guest did confirm, but so far she's not here. If you guys have any questions or you want to, if you're watching us live and I can see it in the comments, I'd be happy to answer those. We'll give her another minute or two. And if she doesn't show up, we'll call it a day. Not quite sure what I'm doing wrong with this stuff. Oh, wait a minute. Here she comes. Woohoo. All right. So here we go. So our guest did show up. Life is good, my friends. She's a conversion copywriter, a marketing strategist. She writes sales copy, launch copy, website copy, and copy for email marketing. She produces ethical, science-based sales copy, science-backed sales copy that connects and converts. Please welcome today's guest, Melissa Esmeralda. Good morning, Melissa.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
I'm very excited. I wasn't sure if you were going to show up or not, but I'm happy to see you.
Apologize.
It's all good. Before we get started with the 1,000,001 questions that I have for you, could you maybe give us the 2 or 3 minute background? What brought you up to this point?
Sure. Yeah. You covered a lot of it. I've been a copywriter for 4 years, and I've been running my business full time for 3 years now, MEO Marketing Group. I was a litigation paralegal for 8 years, and while I was doing that, I was playing a lot of rugby all over the country and internationally in some tournaments. And it was around the time of the pandemic where I realized very clearly I did not enjoy the job. And I felt really guilty because I had everything that I needed. I had a great career, but I loved writing and I didn't know how to make a career out of it. And I actually got a Facebook ad for copywriting. And I had no idea what it was. I watched a masterclass, invested in a course, and then I thought, well, I think I could do this for a living. So I started my LLC, eventually was able to quit my job and go into copywriting full time. It was a very interesting first year just because I really didn't have a whole lot of copywriting experience and obviously no business experience, but I'm really proud of the progress that I've made in the last three years now. I've written everything in the funnel, but I do specialize in sales pages, launch copy, websites, and full service email marketing. But yeah, it's been definitely a ride, but it's been a lot of fun.
Well, awesome. So one of the things you say, Melissa, is that words are powerful and our most inexhaustible source of magic. Your power lies in the transformation. I'm reading because I'm quoting. Your power lies in the transformation you provide, and you need copy to show it off to your audience so that they know they can't be without you. How do we create copy that does that?
That's a great question. That's one of my favorite quotes from Harry Potter. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. Just because I feel like especially in the last few years, we are so overwhelmed with ads and marketing materials, and we see so many videos. But yes, videos are very powerful, but so are words. You can still get a message across without using words, but a lot of different scenarios you usually can't. And one of my favorite things to do with my clients is basically find their unique sales edge. And the way I'm able to do that is through research calls. So I'll ask them who are 3 people that you've worked with that you loved working with? You want to bring more of those. So I interview them over Zoom for 20, 30 minutes and ask them questions what was it like before you worked with Jeff, for example? What was going on in your life? What would have happened if you never worked together? What were your struggles? And they're pretty specific questions, but people get really comfortable. And they start saying, oh, Jeff was amazing. I was such a terrible point in my life and I would have never been able to do XYZ without him. So it gets really specific about what you do, but what it is about you that draws people towards you. And then once you start interviewing a handful of people, you start seeing patterns, what their struggles were, what the transformation was. And you start pulling out key phrases that you can use that can set the tone for the copy. But also it's really nice to give that back to clients and say hey, by the way, your client said these things, because we all like hearing that we're good at what we do. But be able to hear firsthand from clients, completely unfiltered, is a really nice feeling. And just looking at the data essentially from all the research you've compiled, and then picking out the themes, picking out the different topics. That way you're able to like really get to the core message of your offer. So then when someone's reading it, then I do a client numbers, they're like, oh, okay, this person really gets me. And they know where I'm coming from. So it resonates with them a lot more rather than like a basic, I do this and I can help you this, without really getting into like the details of it.
Mm. So I believe exactly what you're saying, that your customers are your best source of business intelligence. When you're in a business or you're in sales, you are selling or talking about what you think people want to hear. But when you ask your actual customers why they do business with you, often I found that the answer is quite surprising. And I'll give you a quick example. I was working on a consulting engagement for about a year and a half with a company that manufactures load balancers. And at the end of it's computer hardware. It doesn't matter what it does. It's actually pretty cool, but it doesn't matter what it does. Anyways, at the end of the engagement, I was sitting with the management team, the sales management team, and the VP of sales, and kind of going around the room, what went well, what could I have done better, getting feedback from them. And the interesting thing to me was, to a person, they all said, one of the things we like best is now the sales team has more confidence. They feel more confident and they sound more confident. These guys sell all over the phone and through Zoom. They sound more confident, and it comes through to the prospect or the customer. And in all my time of doing this, it never once occurred to me, Melissa, that one of the things I give salespeople is more confidence. In my mind, is I give them tips and tools and strategies and techniques, and it helps them sell better. But confidence never entered it into my mind. You can bet, though, now every time I speak to a prospect, it's like, well, one of the things my clients tell me they like about working with me is their salespeople have more confidence. So my question is, if we're in agreement, and we are, that your customers are your best source of business intelligence, is that something a salesperson could do themselves, or do they really need to get somebody like yourself involved?
Oh, that's a great question. That's such a great example too, just because like we are so close to what we do. It's nice to get like a different perspective of it, because you never want to guess what people want. And that's why market research is so important. And I always recommend to anybody, whether a client of mine or not, to do some type of market research. And like, I know not everybody enjoys it. It is a lot harder if you don't have a whole lot of clients, or you're not sure who to interview. You can look like on Facebook groups, for example, or maybe even like online. It is going to be harder to get some answers from them, just because they never worked with you before. So like your best group of people is absolutely your past clients. And they might feel more comfortable if someone like me is answering the questions, and so they don't have to feel like, oh, well, like I have to say great things about Melissa because she's the one interviewing me. But it's still a great place to gather some data, just because like exactly what you were saying, like they might say something that will completely surprise you, but is a really useful piece of information.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with you that it's best if somebody else does it, because it's like when I do live training, we'll pass out a survey afterwards, what do you think of the content? What do you think of the delivery? All that stuff. And, people just like to say, oh, yeah, you were great. You were terrific, because they want to make you feel good. Whereas if their management team does it instead of me doing it, they'll probably get a more honest answer. When I started my business about 2 years in, I actually engaged a marketing expert who visited some of my clients and took videos of them asking, why do you like working with Jeff? And those videos, of course, are on my website now, because I know we're in agreement that when I say something about me, why would people believe me? But when my customers say something about me, they've got no incentive to lie for me. So it's way more powerful. Yes?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, social proof is super powerful, and this is something that I talk about a lot. They're like, yes, we know testimonials are great, but try to get them to be like really specific about what you do. Because like I see so many like sales pages, for example, that say like, oh yeah, this program's great. Like I love this, I love that, but like it doesn't really say like what's great about it, or like anything specific. So it's just a bunch of screenshots. And I always encourage people to do these research calls. So yes, you're getting great like tidbits and like the themes of your copy and everything, but also getting really great testimonials that are super specific to what you do. Like I had a research call with my client's past client for a sales page, and she said like this basically like saved my life and like how I parent my children. And like he told me, he's like, I didn't know she felt that way about like us working together. But like again, it just goes to show like how comfortable people are. Just like if you did something that really transformed their lives and made them happy, they will tell others about it. But we don't always think about saying that to the person that we worked with, because I think people just assume that, like we know that already. So it's really important to have that data.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I like what you're saying, because if all you do is post stuff on your website that says, Jeff's the greatest, Jeff's the best, people tend to doubt, does everybody really love him that much? I have a friend who, and a former business We worked together at a company. He wrote two of my favorite books in probably the last 10 years about selling. One of them called The Transparency Sale. His name is Todd Capone. And Todd used to work for a company that helps companies get better recommendations for things like, Amazon and stuff like that. He's actually studied this very heavily. And he discovered that when all you see is 5-star reviews, people tend to discount them because everybody knows nobody's that perfect, and that you actually get people to trust you more when you've got reviews that are between, I think it's 4.4 and 4.6. That people trust those more than just the best. Melissa's the most awesome, even though that might be true. Is that your experience also?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And especially now the market has shifted a little bit. Like I know, especially like from the pandemic till a couple of years ago, people were a lot more willing to buy. There is a huge boom in online businesses, but now with everything being so expensive, and now that there's a saturation of online businesses, essentially, everyone has been burned at some point. And whether it's either financially or maybe like the experience wasn't what they expected, so the sales cycle or sales process is becoming much longer. And I think that's okay. I don't think that's going to be permanent, but it can be frustrating, like if you don't know where people are stopping. And a lot of it is the trust part. If they see that you just have like maybe like a portfolio and like no social proof and only maybe like a sample or two, that's not going to look as credible versus someone who has like a full-blown website. They have multiple testimonials, they have a really easy onboarding process. And I mean, not to say that like you can't be successful without those things. You can. It's just going to be harder, more likely, because trust is a huge thing, and something like I love recommending to my clients too. I just finished this up for a client recently. It's like a pre-call secret nurture sequence. So she's a coach, and she has a high ticket offer. So we know that it's a longer sales cycle. So after they fill out their application and they book a call, they get a secret email sequence. It's 3 or 4 emails, and it's just trust building, essentially what it is, like talking about her values, having some testimonials, talking about her story, because she used to be in her ideal client's shoes and now she is very successful. So by the time they get on the sales call with you, they're like, oh, okay, like I feel like I know this person a little bit better. So like the trust factor is a lot higher, rather than like they just booked the call and then just completely forgot about who this person is and what they do.
Gotcha. So, look, there's sales copy and launch copy and website copy and email copy. What about AI? I think a lot of people today think, oh, I don't need to hire somebody like Melissa. I'm just going to go on ChatGPT or one of these other 8,000,001 AIs today, and I could be a copywriting genius. I tell you that I do recommend that salespeople, when they're putting together email sequences for themselves, it's useful to use something like ChatGPT, but you can never just take what it spits out and use it in its raw form. You've got to change it. But tell me a little bit about how you feel AI is affecting your business, and is it something that we should be using?
That's a great question. I know there was a huge scare in the copywriter world when ChatGPT first came out. And like, if I was brand new, I think I would have been a lot more nervous. But now that I've been doing this for a few years, like I know I'm a better copywriter than ChatGPT is. And I actually do use AI in my business, not like as an assistant necessarily, but it's almost always for synonyms and for brainstorming. Or if I don't know a whole lot about a topic and I'm not sure what to Google, I just use it as a starting point, because it's not great about giving you like links that aren't broken or like newer information. So I use it as a starting point, and then sometimes maybe to like rephrase a sentence. So I don't think it's a bad thing that people are using it. I do think it's interesting how everyone initially was thinking, oh, hey, I can do everything. They could write all my copy and everything. But then they realized, okay, well, yeah, but I still have to edit it a lot. And if you don't know copywriting principles, it's probably going to take you longer to edit it and learn those things, rather than to maybe work with someone who has a little bit more experience. So like I do like that now a lot of businesses are realizing like, okay, AI is a tool and it's useful and it has its place, but it doesn't replace what a human does. Like that's why I love the market research calls so much, because like those specific tidbits of information, like that's not on the internet anywhere. So like AI can't tell you that, because it can't make anything up. So that's why it's such a big part of my process. So it really hasn't impacted my business. I have been really fortunate that way. But again, I do think it is a useful tool and it has its place, but I would never rely on it to like be like my virtual assistant, for example.
Yeah, I think one of the things that salespeople and everybody needs to remember is that people don't do business with robots; they do business with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I would assume that, like me, you can take a look at copy and go, that was written by ChatGPT, 100%. I know when I do ask ChatGPT to put it, give me 7 emails over 3 weeks that are, you put in all the prompts correctly, and each one starts out exactly the same way. Hope you're doing great today. Well, really, you're going to send 7 emails that all start with "Hope you're doing great today"? I don't think so. So I think humans are still necessary. Now, email marketing, email often has a bad reputation. As an email marketing expert, because I've studied you a bit, you believe that it's the best way to sell your offers and services. Can a sales rep really use email marketing to produce a steady flow of high quality leads? Is it working today?
Yes, it's still working today. You just have to be really mindful about how you're getting people into your funnel. And I think that's where a lot of people are getting frustrated, because we see like so many like big time business owners saying like the goals in your email list, the money's in your list, like the potential ROI is like $39 or $42 per dollar you spend, which sounds great, but it takes a lot of time to get there. And if you're creating like entry point offers, like a free lead magnet, for example, and it's not speaking to your ideal client, then you're not going to get the right type of people into your funnel. Like your launches are going to fail. You're going to get really discouraged. Like your analytics are going to look really bad. So it's really important to keep in mind what the offer is that you're selling in the welcome email sequence, and then having a strategy in place rather than just kind of sporadically sending an email like every couple of weeks, and like not branding your email template when you send out emails, because we get emails all the time from everybody. Almost everyone has multiple email addresses. And if they don't remember who you are, you might be really helpful for them to them, but if they just don't know what your business is, or they don't know where they met you, they're probably going to unsubscribe, and they might even report you to spam, which you really want to avoid, because that can really tank your deliverability. At some point, I do recommend to people to have a core offer in mind. Like mine is like my full service email marketing. So my entry point, which is my lead magnet, is my 10 subject line formulas for attention grabbing emails. So it still solves some of the problem, which is your email marketing, but it doesn't do all of it for you. And they're still connected. So if I had a lead magnet that was like about SEO, but I'm selling you like my email marketing services, that wouldn't really make sense. You want to make sure it's all complementary to each other, and have a welcome email sequence that like builds trust, builds value. I know some people are wary about giving away value for free, but that's also really helpful to get people to trust you. It doesn't mean you have to give away like thousands and thousands of dollars of worth of advice away for free, but you never know what you're going to say that's going to be a light bulb moment for somebody else. And as long as you're sending high quality emails and you have a great offer and you're able to back that up, then the right people will resonate with that. And what I was saying about having an email template is that I typically recommend to my clients to have some type of banner at the top, ideally with a picture of you at the very minimum, your business logo. So people right away, they're like, oh, okay, this is Melissa, this is MEO Marketing Group. So then once they get to the bottom, there's an email signature, and ideally that has a picture of your face, like your headshot, for example, and then like your little one-liner about what you do. And then below that, you can have a little list of what your paid offers are, or maybe even like another free or like a low ticket offer. So I have something about like my email marketing, another about my sales pages, another about like my welcome email sequence templates, just because people have different buying habits. And some people are slower and they'll read every single email for years and then they'll buy from you. Other people are more impulsive and they're just like, oh, okay, I really like this person. Let me see what they have. And the link's already right there. They don't have to dig through everything on your website, because you're building a relationship with them every time you send out an email. And like, I absolutely do think that email marketing is still just as powerful, if not even more, just because the unfortunate thing about social media is that the algorithm changes all the time and nobody knows when or how. So you can have great content there, but you can use it to funnel people onto your email list. And that's where you have a lot of control, like what goes out, when it goes out. You can look at the analytics and you can adjust things from there.
I love what you said about giving it away. I often have people who reach out to me and ask me, Jeff, why do you give away so much stuff on LinkedIn? Because I post every day on LinkedIn, and all I'm doing is giving away information, which I sell to people. And people are, why do you do that? And my dear friend Ellen Volpe, who I think is listening right now, we're in perfect agreement. Just keep giving it away. Just keep giving it away, because you're going to attract the people that want what you have. There's no way people can read my once a day post and get my entire training programs. And I liken it to being a drug dealer. Here, you like this? Try this. Oh, you like it? You want more? Great. Now you got to buy some from me. So I find when you show people who you are and what you can actually do for them through your knowledge, people are attracted to you. And I'm always looking for people who raise their hand. I don't want to make cold calls. I don't want to send I actually don't want to do any outbound. Of course, I do some, but I'm looking to give away stuff so that enough people go, hey, you know what? This guy seems to know what he's talking about. Maybe I'll reach out to him and talk about coaching or training or whatever it is that they're interested in. And I get a third of my business that way from just posting on LinkedIn consistently and effectively. I do have I need a definition here. You offer ethical science-based copy. How does that differ from other copy? What do you mean when you say ethical science-backed?
Essentially what it means is the opposite of the bro marketing tactics that you think of when you think of like a sleazy car salesman. Not that those strategies don't work. They definitely can, but just because they can doesn't mean that they're the best practice to have. It's more so they are a lot less common now, especially in online marketing, which I do like. It's stuff like forcing the no, high pressure sales when there's no reason for it to be high pressure sales. Like you can absolutely have some type of urgency, whether it's internal or external. Like say it's like a group coaching program and you can only take on 10 people and you only have 1 or 2 spots left. That's realistic. But it doesn't have to be like, oh, if you don't buy from me, then you're never gonna hit your goals. Like you're just gonna be depressed forever, like, you know, like really dramatic, like negative stuff. Because I know there are some copywriters that are against pain point marketing, and I disagree with that. Like I think you still should talk about the pain points, but depending on what the topic is, that's going to determine like how, I guess, like deep you go into the pain points. If it's something like, I don't know, like a program for people going through divorce, you don't have to, like, they're already probably in a really difficult situation. You probably don't have to talk about it as much versus someone who maybe is like preparing for like their first baby or something like that. They're really excited. It's very, very different. So it depends on the situation. But essentially what the ethical marketing is that you're being straightforward and you can still be direct without being like rude about it, you know? And then the science back part is just like the research calls and looking at like current trends, talking to past clients just to make sure you're not speaking to your audience in a way that is outdated, because you still, at the end of the day, like your audience is still your audience and you still want to keep them on your email list because you're still building a relationship with them.
Yeah, I'm so happy you talked about pressure. Pressure doesn't work. Look, I know how to pressure people. I've been selling for almost 50 years, and years ago, we pushed hard. We would back people into a corner, get them to make a decision tonight. I sold Encyclopedia Britannica door to door. That was a you bought it tonight or you never bought it thing. So we knew how to push. But when you push against people, they resist and they push back. It just doesn't work anymore. And my friend Ellen, who is still watching, says, yes, scarcity attracts more scarcity. We believe in the abundance theory. You know, give it away, be generous, and the right people will be attracted to you. I wanted to ask you about something you mentioned earlier, and I think I'm not sure that everybody understands the definition. How do you define sales funnel? And what do we need to know about creating sales funnels that actually produce results?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, a sales funnel is essentially like the journey a potential customer or potential client takes from their first point of contact with you until the very end, which is ideally a sale. So at the top of the funnel, you usually have it could be an ad, like say you see like a Facebook ad for a specific product, for example, and that takes you to a landing page. In the landing page, people get these mixed up with sales pages all the time because they're kind of similar. But a landing page's goal is to collect emails. They're usually not too long. And it's more so for colder traffic, and a sales page is more for very warm traffic, and they're at the bottom of the funnel. They're a lot longer, and I'll get to that in a second. But a landing page will tell you whatever the lead magnet is, because they need to get you onto their email list. So their job is to collect the email. They get onto your email list, and then they receive an email sequence from there. It can be, usually it's a sales sequence, depending on what the endpoint offer is. If it's pointing to a sales page, it's very likely going to be a sales sequence rather than a welcome email sequence like with the lead magnet. And during the email sequence, you're trying to hit all their pain points. I always recommend to write the sales page first rather than the sales email first. So I always start with the sales page, and then I write the landing page or the ad, and then I write the emails, because the sales page is all the information you need, because that's where you're incorporating some storytelling and you're really leveling with the person at the very beginning at the top of the sales page, saying like, hey, this is what's going on. Like, I know what this feels like. What if you had X, Y, and Z to take whatever their issue is off their plate so they can get to their desired outcome. And then you introduce yourself a little bit, and then you introduce your offer as a solution. And since sales pages tend to be really long, I've written some that are like 4 or 5,000 words long, just because they were higher ticket offers and there's more objections. So you usually have to have more copy in there. You have like the FAQs. You want to make sure it's skimmable. So if someone only reads the bolded parts, which is not just the sub headlines, it's also pieces in the body copy, they'll still know exactly what the offer is, what they're getting into, like what the price is, etc. So once all that's created, then you can create everything else because you're not necessarily recycling what's in the sales page into the sales emails. You're still borrowing elements from it, then incorporating maybe like a little bit more storytelling or more background, like on a specific testimonial, for example, because once they get to the sales page, you want those people to be very warm, which is different than where they're at the landing page when they're just kind of, they're probably never heard about you before. So the goal is to get them into the email sequence, warm them up there. So by the time they get to the sales page, they're like, okay, this is actually what I'm looking for. And then hopefully you make the sale from there.
Got it. So the landing page is that shorter page with some information on it. The whole thing is designed just to gather somebody's email so that you can start the sequence. The sales page is that one that sometimes you've got to page down forever. And it's, I've looked at them sometimes. I go, does anybody actually get to the bottom of this and read it? And I realized, well, I'm at the bottom of it, so I guess I did. So other people do too. Okay, got it. I want to go back to email marketing for a second, because that's one of your areas of expertise. There were some changes to email marketing this year that started this year. What do we need to know about the changes?
Oh yeah. A lot of people didn't know about them or they didn't know exactly what they needed to do. So Google and Yahoo, who have pretty much everybody's email addresses, they want to prevent spam, or they're trying to reduce spam just because, like I mentioned earlier, I think I have maybe 3 or 4 email addresses, which probably isn't a lot compared to other people. You have them for different reasons. But they've deleted old email addresses. They're at least 2 years old that have been completely inactive, and they've gotten a lot stricter about sending emails. So you have to do like your domain authentication, or like your SPF and some additional records. Email deliverability is a little bit different than email marketing, so I actually ended up outsourcing that just because it was super technical. And the good thing is, once you have all that set up, you don't have to do it again unless you're sending like really spammy emails. But the goal of it is to help your analytics. So if you do have a list that say it's like 5 years old and you don't talk to them very often and you're wondering why nobody's reading your emails, it could be because they don't use those email addresses anymore, which is why it's really important to clean up your list, have some type of re-engagement sequence, and just kick people off if they're not engaging with anything within, say, like in the last 60 days or so. But yeah, that's the main goal, is to reduce spam, make it easier for people to unsubscribe, which I know a lot of email marketers and a lot of business owners, they were freaking out about that, because now you can look into your Gmail inbox, and before you even open the email, there's a little thing next to it that says unsubscribe. And I think it's a good thing both ways.
Same thing on my phone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so much easier. And I think it's a good thing because you only want to keep people who want to hear from you. So if you have thousands of people who don't really know who you are, they just maybe check that email every so often, that's going to mess with your analytics. And it's so much better to have a smaller, healthier list of active subscribers rather than to have a ton of people who are very mediocre and don't necessarily see you as an authority because maybe they just don't remember who you are. But yeah, those are the main things. I think they're a good thing. And like once you get everything authenticated, then it's really not a big deal. Just send high quality emails and try not to send something that could potentially trigger someone to report you to spam, for example, because then once you get that high enough, that email address is completely useless, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Look, I'm in favor of anything that reduces the amount of spam I get, because I'm sure, like everybody else, I get tons and tons every single day, which is just a waste of my time. And personally, I'd rather somebody that unsubscribes if they don't want my emails. I'm looking for the people, again, who are raising their hand. The people that don't want to hear from me, God bless you. Go have a great life. And I don't want to impose on you, but I am looking for those people who like what I have and want to engage with my content. So it's okay with me if people unsubscribe, just like it's okay with me when people say no to a sale. I prefer it when they say yes, but no is my second favorite word in sales. Everything other than yes or no, I despise. But it's okay. We have to get rid of, like Ellen Volpe said before, that scarcity mindset. There's plenty of people out there. There's billions of people in the world. You don't need billions of people to love you. You just need that one engaged audience. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I know people get really hung up on their unsubscribes, and I don't, just because like well, I mean, like I do this for a living, so like I understand like it's part of it. But I also always check my email broadcast just to see like, oh, have I broken my record of how many people unsubscribe? Just because like again, like I was saying before, like people just don't remember you. And I think my record was like 17 unsubscribes, and like I wasn't, my feelings weren't hurt by it. I just know that's just what happens when people realize like, oh, okay, maybe this just isn't the type of content that I'm looking for, or I just was here for the lead magnet, which is fine. So I'd rather they just unsubscribe early on rather than stay on my list for a couple of years and never open anything.
I got it. We're about halfway through with our interview with Melissa Esmeralda, who is a conversion copywriter and marketing strategist. We're going to take a 60-second break for a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. And our sponsor is me. Hi, I'm Jeff Goldberg, the founder of the Sales Pro Network. For nearly 5 decades, I've been selling, managing, coaching, and training salespeople internationally. And I'm often asked for one-on-one or private coaching, but it does involve a substantial investment. For that reason, I've recently developed the Sales Pro Insider Network community. It works like this. We get together twice a month on Tuesday nights from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. At the first session of the month, it's you and me, with me taking your questions and giving you the advice and help you need to both prospect and sell more effectively. At the second session of the month, we'll have a guest coach speaking on a fascinating topic that helps sellers like you and me. And of course, we'll do group coaching then too. The best part is the investment is just $27 for the first month, and there's no long-term contract at all. In fact, you can cancel at any time. Go to crushsalesgoals.com. That's crushsalesgoals.com. I hope to see you there. I am incredibly excited about this month's guest. Next Tuesday night, the 27th, my guest is going to be Patty Johnston. She's a procrastination expert. She helps people beat procrastination in 30 days. So if you're interested in attending, if anybody's listening, you can either DM me and I'll send you a link to register for free as my guest, or you can go to crushsalesgoals.com. I'm 99% sure that lets you register for free if you haven't attended before. But if not, just DM me through the Sales Pro Network or through LinkedIn. I'm happy to send the link. It's going to be awesome. And we're talking to Melissa Esmeralda, who is a conversion copywriter and marketing strategist. We were talking about list size a moment ago, Melissa. You say that list size and follower count don't really matter if you have quality, engaged people. How do we create that engagement? What's the key to getting people to actually read your emails and engaging with you?
Yeah, I think that's the hard part for a lot of people, because like what I touched on this a little bit earlier, that we hear so much. It's like you have to grow your email list, but there isn't a whole lot of guidance really on like how to set that up and like what you do afterwards. And I think before, if say you're starting from scratch, before you get started, I would create some type of entry point. Some people like to go the newsletter model. Newsletters are extremely popular right now just because they can be monetized. I think that's why they're so enticing to a lot of people. But the downside is with the newsletter, they usually have to be from a very, very niche topic, and they have a specific format, and it takes a long time to be monetized. Like you usually have to have several thousand subscribers before you have any type of ad space. And then once you get bigger, there is more ad space. So it feels more like a newspaper. And not everybody loves that format. Some people, they prefer more like a weekly email to a list, for example, because it feels a little bit more personable. But you still need to have some type of entry point. So whether it's a newsletter or a lead magnet, I usually recommend a lead magnet, just because a newsletter does require a lot of research and a lot of business owners don't have the time for that. I always suggest to have a lead magnet be tied to your core offer. So like mine is like my subject line formulas, it's tied to my full service email marketing because that's what I'm selling at the end. So you want it to solve some of the problem, but not the entire thing. But you still want it to be really helpful, and you still want to over deliver. And I always disagree with having a checklist as a lead magnet, because they can be useful if maybe whoever's reading it is a little more sophisticated and already has maybe like steps 1 to 3 completed. But if they don't really understand the jargon, like it's not going to really do anything for them. It can be helpful like the end of a workbook, for example, but if you're a great speaker and not necessarily a great writer, then I would suggest a video series or maybe even a private podcast, which is super popular right now because we're all so busy. And like I like listening to like random podcasts when like I'm making dinner or where I'm eating lunch, just because like it like lets me like unwind a little bit, but like I'm still being entertained, and it's such an easy way to learn. But if you feel like you're a strong writer, then you can create a workbook and you don't need a lot of tools. Like I created mine with Canva, which is free, which links to a Google Doc, which is free. Or actually, I pay like $5 a month for the business, which isn't a big deal. But it doesn't have to look super fancy as long as it's valuable. And I always suggest to attach a survey to your lead magnets, because then that helps gather some market research. And of course, not everybody is going to respond to your survey, but it's a great way to get testimonials. And that's how I got testimonials for my lead magnet. And now it's on my landing page and on my homepage, just because like I asked specific questions about like what's the quality of the resource, to feel like anything was missing. So if I ever want to upgrade it, I know where to look and I don't have to guess. So once you have that high quality lead magnet that provides a lot of value, that already builds a lot of trust. So then you have this welcome email sequence that like introduces you, your values, has some social proof in there. I know this is a little not necessarily controversial, but some people they'll introduce themselves right away as soon as they deliver the lead magnet. And I disagree with that, just because for the most part, people are there for the deliverable. So I suggest having like a sentence or two saying like, oh, my name is Jeff. This is what I do, and this is how I can help you. And I'll be back in your inbox in like 3 days or like a week or whatever the cadence is. And then you can introduce yourself a little bit more, because hopefully by that time they've already consumed whatever your lead magnet is, and they're starting to associate your email address with you in your business. So then you start introducing yourself. You link back to the lead magnet in case they haven't gotten to it. Have some brand values. And I know nobody likes this response, but there is no right number of emails for a welcome email sequence. It depends a lot on the price point of whatever it is that you're selling. Because if it's higher ticket, you're likely going to need more emails. And also depends on your industry too, and then how sophisticated your target audience is. So like if they're very early on in business, they're probably going to need a little bit more objection handling emails, or someone that's a little bit maybe further along in business and has more of the budget, it's probably going to be a little bit shorter. So you do want to keep that in mind. And as far as growing your list, once you have all that taken care of, you can start speaking on podcasts. You can start speaking on summits. Summits have been pretty well, what have worked the best for me are bundles, which are very popular right now. And essentially what it is that there is a bundle host. So say you're hosting a bundle for online service providers, for example. There's always a theme, or there's almost always a theme. And there's a short application just asking what item do you want to contribute. Some bundles are really strict. They don't allow any lead magnets or any webinars or like quizzes or anything like that. But most of them let you use something that's at least like $17 or $27 in value. So this bundle host, they'll create this like massive landing page, and it'll have every single contribution on there. So then once the bundle goes live, which is usually like a 1 week window, everybody that is a contributor, they're going to send an email to their list. They're going to post about it on social media. So then you potentially can get hundreds of subscribers within a few days, which that's primarily how I've grown my list with bundles and with email lists. I just highly recommend that whatever you're using to get people into your funnel, make sure it's high value and it's complementary to whatever it is that you're selling to them, and just be patient because a lot of people are hesitant to buy right away. So it might take a little bit of time, but that's also why your email marketing is so important, to have a solid strategy in place rather than just kind of sending an email and hoping it goes well.
Yeah. So I don't want to be too basic, but I'm not sure that everybody understands all the definitions. You've talked about lead magnets a bunch of time. Can we just define what a lead magnet is? What's its purpose? I have a lead magnet. It's I think it's the 30 things you need in your tech stack. And for me, the whole thing is designed to offer something to people that they can actually use. And in return, I'm getting their email address. Is that what we're talking about with lead magnet?
Oh yeah. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. Some people call it a conversion. I forget. That one's not very often. But a freebie is pretty common. But yeah, it's exactly what a lead magnet is. You're providing something for free in order to get their email address.
And do you have any suggestions for the best types of lead magnets?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's more so what you're good at personally, rather than how, and that's how you can deliver it. So like I was saying, like if you're a great speaker, but then use your voice. If you're a great writer, then use that. You can also get pretty creative. Sometimes they're a little bit more interactive, as long as it's pretty specific to how it can help this person. And once they open it, you're over delivering, because you don't want to start the relationship off on the bad foot. So that's why I don't recommend checklists. It's not like, oh, okay, well, this is just like 10 things for like something I don't even know how to do. then they're just not going, they're not going to remember it. But like if they expect one thing and then that's what they get, and they get some additional stuff on top of that, they're gonna be like, wow, Jeff provided all this information. Like I had no idea that I even needed. And that starts the relationship off on a great foot.
Gotcha. We actually have a question. We were talking before about the new rules of email marketing, people unsubscribing. Ellen Volpe is asking, I heard that there are possible security issues when unsubscribing. Is that true?
Is that for security issues for the person unsubscribing or the person who owns the email list?
I believe it's for the person who's unsubscribing. And I think the thinking is that if you do not unsubscribe, they don't know whether they actually got through to you or not. But if you unsubscribe, they actually know this is a valid email address. Ellen, if you want to further educate us on what you're trying to ask. But have you heard anything like that?
I haven't. I have noticed though, like if you unsubscribe from within your inbox, like before you go into the email or at the very top, once you open the email where it says unsubscribe, it doesn't always work. And I'm not sure why. So if we are unsubscribing, I suggest you go to the very bottom and click the link and just make sure that everything goes through okay. I don't know if that's just because like that option is newer in Gmail. I'm not aware of any security issues. I know that sometimes ESPs or email service providers, so those big platforms that can send bulk emails for you, so like MailerLite, ConvertKit, and like Mailchimp and stuff, they can get hacked. So that can maybe present some security issues. I know that happened to a big company pretty recently, but as far as I know, I haven't heard anything about security issues.
Got it. And my friend John Hill gave you a compliment. She looks so young to be so knowledgeable about email marketing. John, Melissa's actually 75 years old. She's just really good at taking care of herself. Good compliment.
Oh, thank
right?
you.
Actually, let's talk a little bit about maybe what keeps you so young. You were, and I think still are, a competitive rugby player, yes?
Yeah, I played on and off for a little bit over 10 years. Don't play as much anymore. Recently started taking up boxing, which has been really fun. I don't know what I'm doing yet. The footwork's really hard, but it's a lot of fun.
And rugby is a tough sport. How did rugby, your background in rugby and playing in that sport, how did that affect your business life?
Oh, I love that question. I never thought they would have anything in common, but it's just, I mean, I played a lot of sports growing up, and my main sports were rugby and track. I also did cross country, but track is a lot more fun because I don't like distance running. But there's a certain type of like mental toughness that comes with like sprinting and running long distances. And then with rugby, because like it is a very tough game, that really helps with entrepreneurship just because it's really hard all the time, like especially when you first start out and like if you're going into an industry maybe you don't know much about. It's a lot to learn, and then the whole business side of things, it's very different as well. Like I didn't know like what my onboarding process was like I had to create my website from scratch. I had to do everything from scratch, which is fine. I know that happens to a lot of people, but you do have to have a lot of resilience because it's very easy to feel like the way I've explained it to my friends, it's like you go to the gym every day and you're working out really hard and you're never taking progress pictures. So on the day-to-day basis, you think, oh, well, like, what's the point? Like, I'm not even getting anywhere. But then 6 months from now, you realize, like, oh, I can lift like 100 more pounds or something like that. It feels like you're not doing a lot, but the small things that you're doing every single day will make an impact eventually. You just don't know when it's going to be. And that's one of the most frustrating things for a lot of people when they're newer, because it takes so much patience and it does require a lot of resilience because you're going to get rejected a lot. Things are going to go the way you want them to. You just kind of have to take it as like, oh, okay, well, that didn't work out. Like, what can I learn from it? Rather than like, oh, this is terrible. Like I don't deserve success or something like that, which I know can happen a lot. But I think because like I've played that sport for so long, I'm just like, okay, well, this sucks right now, but what can I do to avoid that? Like, well, how can I pivot? Because I was very used to an environment. Like if I didn't know how to do something, like if I want to improve my tackling or my passing, for example, I would ask a coach. And if they didn't know, they would ask somebody else that could help me. And then when I first quit my job, I was like, well, I don't have any resources. Like who do I ask? So eventually I was able to like build that community and everything. But it is really important to have somebody that you can lean on in terms of maybe not quite mentorship, but you can ask questions to, because you really can't Google everything. And you do have to learn some things on your own, but it does help a lot if you're able to have at least like some people like friends or like business mentors, for example, that can give you some type of guidance. So you're not feeling like you're constantly failing all the time.
Yeah, I think it's the mental toughness that competitive sports like rugby provides you with that transfers over to business incredibly well. My coach was a competitive lacrosse player, college lacrosse. I think she still plays ice hockey. And
Oh, cool.
she's a lot younger than me, but she's not your age. And, in coaching sessions, many times she would use these sports analogies, which even though I've never been a sports guy, I have no interest in sports, but it transfers over beautifully. The being part of a team, getting up every time, and maybe you got to exercise more, practice more, whatever it is. It's that mental toughness. And in sales, you need to be mentally strong. It's not physically exhausting, but in sales, you've got to be mentally strong, because for most of us, we hear no more often than we hear yes. And if you're not mentally strong, you're going to get crushed by the rejection, when actually I believe rejection is just part of the deal. And knowing how many no's it takes to get to a yes helps you mentally. But it's that mental toughness that says, I know that what I have is great. I just got to speak to the right people in the right way, and I'm going to get there. That keeps you going when times are tough. Yes?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's hard because we see so many, like, especially like when I've seen this a lot with like newer business owners, that they get really discouraged because they'll see, oh, this person, they made six figures in like 6 months, and or like while they were pregnant, or like these outrageous claims. And like I know some of them, like a lot of them are true, but they're also not always honest about how they got there. For some of them, it's like their third business, or their spouse was able to support them, or they had like a huge budget for ads. And not everybody has that, like especially if you don't have a lot of money to start with, or you have kids, for example, you have other responsibilities. It's going to take longer, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. It's just going to be different to everybody else, and not all wins are monetary. And I feel like that's not talked about a whole lot, which is surprising, because like, yes, it's great if you hit like when you hit like your first 10K month, for example, but there are a lot of other ways that you can improve. You can become like a faster writer. Maybe your close rate is better on sales calls. Maybe you realize, oh, I don't want to offer this service anymore, and now I'm speaking more to like ideal fit clients. There's lots of different ways to do it. And what I started doing, I keep a business journal, so I only write in it once a month. So the right side is like my to-dos, like what I'm doing today and tomorrow. Then the left side is everything that happens. So like the good stuff, like the bad stuff, like what I'm hoping to accomplish, all that stuff. And it's really interesting going back, because even just going back like a couple of months, I'm like, oh yeah, I was really worried about that, but like I got through it. Like ended up going a lot better than I thought. And it's nice to see some like tangible wins, even if it's not always money related, which I think a lot of people will gravitate to. And I completely understand why. Like, I mean, like when we're seeing all these huge wins all the time, but there's a lot of different ways to measure your success.
Yeah. I see a lot of claims on Facebook by coaches. And like you say, I'm sure some of them are true, but a lot of them, I look at them, I go, come on. There's just, I love you in post. Oh, my client just sold, $100,000 in the first hour of their launch. And are you interested in finding out how I help them do that? It's like, really? $100,000 in the first hour of their launch? Yes, I would actually love to talk to you if that was really true, but
yeah,
I kind of doubt it a little bit. I want to come back to email marketing though, because I'm fascinated by it. I have two online programs. One is called Conversational Selling Skills, which is the sales process from start to finish once you've got an appointment with somebody. My other one is Professional Prospecting, which is how do you get appointments? And in my professional prospecting course, I do discuss some email marketing and offer some tips, but I am not, and I always say, I am not an email marketing expert, but I've studied this and I've learned from people who are, and I use it myself. But if you want email marketing advice, you really need to go to an expert like you, Melissa. But one of the things I do suggest is that if your subject line is not fantastic, you might as well have not written the email, because it's your subject line that gets them to open the email. If they don't open it and read it, doesn't work. So if the subject line isn't compelling, you've wasted your time. What are some tips for creating compelling subject lines that actually get people to open up emails?
Oh yeah, that's a great topic, because I would say that it's two things. Like absolutely what's the subject line itself, but also how if you've built enough authority that people see your name in their inbox and like, oh yeah, I like hearing from them every single week. That's also going to be a big driver in people opening your subject line, even if maybe it's not the best written one. It can be hard to be concise in your subject lines. I always write them last, just because I don't want the subject line to like dictate the body copy. I'd rather write the body copy itself. I like pulling a phrase from the email itself and using it as a subject line. Not every single time, but especially if if I have a testimonial in the email itself, then I'll have the best part of it in the subject line, because you see the quotation marks, it builds curiosity, because you want to pique their curiosity, but you don't want it to be clickbaity. Because I've seen it, I'm starting to see it less, but I saw this trend where a subject line would be a quote, or it would be kind of like a random phrase that didn't quite make sense. And then you read the email and it's not actually in the email, it's in the podcast interview that they're referencing, but they still don't reference it in the email. So like that, I feel like is a little, not quite clickbaity, but like somewhat dishonest. But I have a bunch of subject line formulas in my resource, but like what I usually end up doing is trying to pique the curiosity. I use the word this or that a lot in subject lines, and just making it as short as possible, because you do get cut off eventually. It's about 6-ish words, but also use your pre-header text to your advantage, because if maybe you didn't have enough space to like really convey the whole message, the pre-header text, you can use that as like a continuation of whatever the subject line is, and add a little bit more context. So when they're reading the email, they don't feel like they've been bamboozled by something that's a completely different topic.
Yeah, and it is a real challenge keeping subject lines short. We have to remember that most people today are looking at them on their phone, which has less real estate on the subject line than you would on a desktop. It's a real challenge. I want to come back to something you mentioned earlier, though, sales pages. For people who are selling a fantastic digital product, but not seeing great results from their sales page, what do we need to do on a sales page that actually increases the likelihood of somebody clicking through and maybe buying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it depends whether the sales page is living on your website or if it's part of your funnel. Sales pages are typically gated, so they're usually the last thing somebody sees after they go through their funnel. But sometimes, like with a lot of coaches, for example, or people who have like a signature digital product, it'll be its own page on their website. So if that's the case, then I would make sure that you're being very clear about the transformation it offers and what it does. But I actually don't recommend to have the name of it in the headline, because you still want to build a curiosity, because that's from the very beginning. When someone gets to your sales page, or any type of copy that you have, you want them to self-identify themselves. So if you have an intriguing headline that talks to whatever their pain point is and hints about the solution, they're gonna be like, oh, okay, well, this sounds interesting. And then they start reading a little bit more. And I do feel that a lot of sales pages, even for digital products too, at the very top part of it, they tend to go straight into the product rather than using more like empathy, basically. So like you don't have to have like paragraphs and paragraphs. It can be as simple as a paragraph or two, or if it's maybe like a group coaching program, you probably need a little bit more context in there, but you're just kind of letting them know you're painting the day-by-day picture for them. So like what it's like with this frustration, what it's like living with it, and then having a rhetorical questions like, what if you had something that could XYZ to help you with this goal, for example. So that's when you start introducing yourself really quickly to build that authority and say like, hey, I am so and so, I have 10 years of experience helping, and then talking about your ideal client specifically. So they're like, oh, okay, well, this person really knows what they're talking about. And then you introduce your course or your product, or your digital or your offer, and then that starts building the trust right away. And that's when you start talking about the modules, the different features, everything that's in it. And then, of course, throughout it, you are going to be answering objections. I also recommend for your FAQ section to make them a little bit more conversational, and not just, how much is this? Do I have time for this? Try to answer, have all the questions in your FAQ section be information that's already in the sales page, which might sound a little bit redundant, but not everyone reads an entire sales page. Certain people do, like slower decision makers, but there are some people that they'll get excited about the headline and the top part of the sales page, and then they'll go straight to the FAQs. So you want to make sure everything that's above the FAQs, it's still answered the FAQs themselves, just maybe phrased a little bit differently, but it still feels conversational and not robotic, because like you were saying, people buy it from people and not from robots. So that can be really helpful, because you want to overcome those objections as much as possible, without feeling like you're overwhelming them with a lot of information that they don't need.
And what about websites in general? I mean, we want to drive people to our website, but we also want them to stay there a long time. We want them to stay on the pages. What advice do you have for people who want to make their websites more sticky?
Oh, the number one thing I always recommend. So the top part of your website, it's called the fold. So there are other names for it. That's what I've always called it. So it's like when you see like a tagline, for example, before you start scrolling down. So usually there's a tagline and a button. That has to be very, very clear about what you do, because I forget what the statistic is. It's really high though, but it's the number one reason why people leave websites. They don't know what the website does, because when someone comes to a sales page, it's usually warmer traffic. If someone comes to a landing page or to a homepage of a website, it's probably going to be pretty cold, which means they're probably shopping around. And if they don't know what you do right away, there's a good chance they might go with somebody else who does the same thing as you do and might not even be as good as you are, but they just were confused. And confusion is the number one conversion killer. So making it very clear about who you are, how you can help them, and then having a button that links either to your services page or like your application page or to book a call, for example. That's always my biggest recommendation because it's really tempting to try to be clever or to have maybe like a tagline, but a tagline might not always be clear. If it says exactly what you do and like who you help, then that's completely okay. But as you want to make sure they know exactly what they're walking into once they get onto onto your website. So when they scroll down, that's when they start self-identifying themselves more with the copy and the problem, and then realizing like, oh, okay, Jeff is the solution to my problems.
And that's what we want to show people. You've got an issue, I'm the solution, or my product or my service is the solution.
Exactly.
I'm checking the time and we're quickly running out. I'm so upset about that because I've got 8 zillion more questions for you. Some course creators don't beta test before they launch a course. Is this the kiss of death? I mean, is there any hope for somebody who hasn't beta tested? I know what people need. I'm going to create this great course on X or Y or Z. Have people doomed themselves by not beta testing first, or is there still hope?
Doomed, maybe not quite doomed. I think it depends on the offer, but yeah, it's something I always recommend. It's actually something I'm going through currently. I created an email marketing course for people who are looking to either start an email list or they have an email list and they're looking to monetize it. And it's currently in beta testing right now, just because you want to test everything that you have before you have like a full-blown offer, because number one, you have to make sure like your list, your emails and your audience and social media, if you have that as well, that they're an engaged audience. It's an offer that they want, but you also have to have social proof with it. Because exactly what you were talking about before, like I can say all day, every day, oh yeah, this course is great. Like I packed it with information, but if they don't see that other people have gone through it and like experienced a transformation, that's not gonna help, especially like if your list isn't very engaged. And I've heard and seen so many failed launches because a course or an offer wasn't tested beforehand. And it's so easy to get discouraged. And the problem usually isn't you. It could be the messaging, it could be your audience, but it's so important to have at least a small group of people go through whatever your new offer is, just so you can have some solid feedback as well. It's not just for the testimony. You want to make sure that everything is clear because we're so close to our offers. We might think that, say, like module 2 is really helpful, but somebody might say, well, actually, I was really confused about why this was included, or like I didn't understand like X, Y, and Z. So that lets you know, okay, I need to clarify that and clean it up before I fully launch it. So if you don't go through beta testing, it's not quite the kiss of death. It can be, but I definitely recommend having a handful of people go through your offer, even if you say you've already launched it and maybe the launch didn't go as expected and you didn't test it before. It's not like you can't do it now. You can always test at a different time, but it's great for feedback. It's great for testimonials, and it can help you refine and grow your course as well, which can also increase the value as time goes on.
Got it. So we're almost out of time, and I want to share your contact information in just a moment, but there's something I have to discuss with you first. I noticed on your website and many of your pictures and also on your social media, you have one of my favorite things in the world. After my 3 children, my favorite thing on the planet is dogs. I think dogs are truly the best thing on the planet. You have your dog in a lot of the pictures that you have. What's your dog's name? What kind of dog is it? And why are you so in love with that dog?
His name is Gamba. He's a German Shepherd Husky, so he's huge. He's like the same size as like a full-bred German Shepherd, but with the blue eyes. He was actually abandoned. He was my friend's boyfriend's dog, and I was just supposed to watch him for a couple months, and then the guy just never came back. So I've had him for almost 3 years now. So like we're always together. We spend like 99% of our time together, and he's really sweet. But like nobody wanted him beforehand. And he like would run away, was super skinny, but now he's like nice and healthy and very loved and taken care of.
I love that. And that's why I love working from home so much, because I get to hang out with my dog all the time. I really do believe dogs are truly the best thing on the planet. We are out of time. So before we go, I'm going to share my screen. Could you please tell people how to reach you if they're interested in chatting with you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can check out my website. You can send me an email at melissa@meomarketinggroup.com. I'm also on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on the same handles. I love talking about all things copywriting. I know it's like not the most fun subject, but I find it very interesting. So if you have any questions about anything, feel free to reach out.
Okay. And I'm sharing the screen, but this is going to get converted to a podcast. So for people who are listening, would you like to spell out that? Because you actually speak faster than I do, and I speak really fast. Would you like to spell out that email address so people can get in touch with you?
Oh, yeah. It's Melissa at meomarketinggroup.com. So 2 G's.
Okay. And of course, if you want to find Melissa and you can't find her, DM me. I'll be happy to give you our contact information. Melissa Esmeralda, thank you so much for sharing your brilliance so generously with us. I really appreciate it. This is fantastic. And I will end as I always do. Gang, please remember that sales is a game of making things happen. Get out there and make sales happen. Have a great weekend, everybody. Next week, it's the beginning of Labor Day weekend. There will be no broadcast next week. We'll be back the week after. Thank you, Melissa. Thanks, everybody. Have a great one.
Thank you so much.